Getting married provides us with one of life's greatest opportunities and one of its greatest challenges. The opportunity to build the most intimate of relationships and the challenge to learn what it means to love another person and to look beyond our own needs. Attending the marriage or pre-marriage course offers couples the opportunity to invest in their relationship. They provide the practical tools that will help any couple build a strong marriage, no matter how long they've been together. On both courses, the setting feels like a date. The first part of every session is spent relaxing with something to eat and drink. This is followed by watching a film about different aspects of marriage, broken up by times for discussion as a couple. All your conversations are completely private. Join the marriage or pre-marriage course to discover how to love each other better and not just stay together, but grow and thrive as a couple.
If you are new with us, or if you are wondering how you can make this church your church, then Find Your Place is for you. Find Your Place is a 75-minute conversation where you will discover the best environments for you and your family to grow in your faith. You will learn about the ways our church family can come alongside you to help you grow in your relationship with Jesus. You can sign up for the next Find Your Place on the Westside Leavenworth app or on our website at westsideleavenworth.com/FYP.
Good morning, Westside. I hope that you had a wonderful Christmas celebration this year. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time joining our online campus, thank you for joining us. Remember to log in and engage with the hosts in the chat if you have an opportunity to. They would love to pray for you. You can also engage in some of the discussion questions with them after the service. If you're on Facebook and you're watching this, remember to like this video, share it onto your timeline, invite people to join with you this morning as we gather online for worship this morning. We are so happy that you have let us come into your home this weekend to bring a service to you and your family and any friends that you might have gathering with you. So Casey is going to bring this message that I hope you really listen into as we gather together and join together heading into this new year of 2021. It's got a great word for us from the scriptures. So stay tuned, and then we will have some worship after that, and I will see you again after the service.
Hey everyone, I'm grateful that we get to be with you in your home or wherever you are today. Now, before we jump into today's teaching, I want to let you know that we begin a new series next Sunday called It's That Good. I wanted to wait until the end of my teaching to tell you all about this, but it's that good, and I don't want you to miss it. Now, this is a great opportunity for you to invite someone to join you online or on site with us next week. So I invite you to invite someone to join you for the start of this series because it's that good. Now, as we spend the next few moments together, I encourage you to jump into the chat if you are on our online campus or get involved in the comments on Facebook and stick around for the end. We'll have some discussion questions that will help you talk it over. Now, the new year has a natural way of helping us reset our priorities. Over the next couple of days, you may take and make some decisions to change some of your priorities. You may make a health your priority. You may make your finances a priority. The new year is a great opportunity, a new opportunity. Here are a couple things I've learned, though, about priorities. The first is this: we give up the most for what we most value. We will sacrifice for those things or people in which we see a greater value. We will sacrifice a lot of time and a lot of money for our kids to play a sport that they can have a chance for a scholarship at a good school. That's why when that season comes around, everything evolves around that sport for some people. It's a priority. Priorities are what we value most and what we give up the most for. So if you want to know what your priority is, ask your kids or your spouse where you spend most of your time, or look at your bank account to see where you spend most of your money. Why? Because we invest or spend most of our time and most of our money on what we most prioritize. Now, the second thing to quickly notice about a priority is this: we must place first what we value most. Comfort and routines can easily displace what we need to place as a priority. So we must place first what we value most. We can't set priorities until we identify the single priority that is most important. The first thing we list as our premier priority will automatically align everything underneath it. This is a spiritual decision. It's a decision we have to make. Setting priorities helps us recognize what we are willing to give up for the sake of what's more important. This is really what a priority does for us. It helps us determine to what extent we will sacrifice to get something in return. To what extent will you sacrifice your comfort for the sake of getting healthy? To what extent will you sacrifice a new car for the sake of a better financial future? To what extent will you sacrifice pleasing your college friends for the sake of a stronger marriage? We give up something for the sake of something better. Now, I want to ask you some very challenging questions. These questions are not made to make you feel bad. These are to challenge you to think about your priorities in this upcoming year. These questions will hopefully do for you what they've done for me and our family. These questions, if you answer them honestly and through a Jesus-centered worldview, will help you shift your priorities so you can choose what is most important to you. So here's my first question. What is the faith of your family worth? Now let's ask this question directly about you. What is it worth to you that you grow in your personal faith and in your personal relationship with Jesus? How important is it to you that you know who Jesus is, to know him personally, to know and follow his truth? And then what is it worth to you that your spouse grows in his or her faith? What sacrifices are you willing to make for the sake of his or her faith? What is it worth to you then also that your kids or grandkids grow in their faith? What is the faith of this next generation worth? And what are you willing to give up for the sake of your kids or grandkids to know Jesus and follow his truth for their lives? Another question is this: what is the faith of your neighbors and those in your city worth? What is it worth to you that your neighbors know Jesus? And what is it worth to you that your friends who live close know Jesus? What is it worth to you that those who work in your office know Jesus? This is not to place a guilt trip on you. I simply want to challenge you. I don't want you to feel unnecessarily bad that your kids play an organized sport. After all, I coach my son's baseball team. However, the greater of value something is to you, the higher of a priority it needs to be. Unfortunately, we say things are a priority, but they are the things that are sacrificed for a career, a scholarship, and even our personal happiness. We sacrifice, and we sacrifice the real priorities in our life. So, is the faith of your family being sacrificed at the cost of something else? Now, the Apostle Paul knew something about priorities. Paul was someone who set the right priorities. God used him to change the spiritual landscape of an empire and to impact billions of people through his writings. But Paul sacrificed a lot for the sake of his priorities. Now, following Paul's way of life is not feasible for many of us. He was single without a family, but what he knew is very transferable to us. And it leads to what he would write and say a blessing. So here's what Paul says about what should be our priority. He writes, "Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself slave to everyone to win as many as possible. I have given up some things for the sake of what is more important. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak." Then Paul does something amazing. He boils it all down like this: "I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some." You get what all possible means is. This is the extent you go to get your kid into that academic opportunity. This is what you did to get that date with that girl or that guy back in the day. This is what you did to go to that dream school. This is what you did to buy your dream car. This is what you did to land that client by all possible means. But Paul's priority was different than what most of our number one priority is. Our priorities are more about what we get than what we give. But Paul said he became all things to all people so that by all possible means he might save some. So what was Paul's priority? Well, in verse 23, he says this: "I do all this for the sake of the gospel." I give it all up. I give up all this, he says, for the sake of the good news of Jesus. He gives it all up for the sake of the gospel. Paul's priority was the gospel of Jesus. Why? Well, Paul would say that I may share in its blessings in that verse that follows that. See, Paul knew what the gospel of Jesus meant to him, because Paul understood that the gospel was his number one priority, and he made that his number one priority. So why was the gospel Paul's number one priority? Because it was good news. It was good news to Paul. And Paul knew it was the most important thing to him personally, that he needed to share it with others publicly. Paul would look at you and say, there is a blessing in making the gospel your priority. The gospel of Jesus is the good news that Jesus lived the perfect life you couldn't live. And the gospel is the good news that Jesus died to pay the penalty you couldn't pay. And Paul would write, and many other New Testament writers would give evidence that the good news is that Jesus came back to life. And since he came back to life, Jesus came back to life to give life to all who trust in and follow him. Paul was like, that's the blessing. That's the blessing I share in. That's the blessing the good news is to me. And I want that to be the blessing, the good news it is to you. See, what Paul couldn't do for himself, Jesus came and did for him. And what you can't do for yourself, Jesus came and did for you. What Jesus has done for me and you is so important that all we do needs to be for the sake of this gospel. That was what Paul's priority is. He would say, this gospel is my priority because it's that important to me. And we share in the gospel's blessing when we share it with others. So if Paul were here with us and we were to ask Paul that question, hey, Paul, what is the faith of your family worth? Well, Paul, as we know, wasn't married, so that might not be a relevant question to ask him. But if we asked him, what is the faith of the next generation worth? What is the faith of our neighbors and city worth? What is the faith then of a lost generation worth? I think Paul would answer and say everything. The faith of those I love, I believe Paul would say, is worth everything. The faith of those you love most is worth everything. And I believe Paul would say, I would give it all up for the sake of them knowing the gospel. Now, I want to ask you, is your faith in the good news of Jesus worth everything to you? Is your spouse's faith worth everything to you? Is the faith of your kids worth everything to you? Is the faith of your neighbors and coworkers worth everything to you? Is the gospel enough of a blessing to you that you would sacrifice something for the sake of others having their faith in Jesus? Well, here's today's teaching big idea. What will you forsake for the sake of the gospel? It's a question. It's really a big question that I want you to wrestle with going into 2021. What will you forsake for the sake of the gospel? What will you forsake for the sake of your family knowing Jesus? What will you forsake for the sake of your neighbors or a coworker to know Jesus? How good is this good news to you? And how good the good news is to you will determine how much you will forsake for the sake of others knowing it, so they can find life in Jesus. See, what's more valuable to you today? Is your son or daughter having a scholarship or them having a faith in Jesus because of his good news for them more valuable? What's the faith of your teenager worth? What's more valuable for your teenager, a faith in Jesus or a future opportunity? What's the faith of your spouse worth? What's your faith worth? What are you willing to forsake for the sake of the gospel? What priority will Jesus and his gospel be for you this year? Jesus' resurrection proves there's life in following him. This is what Jesus, the author and giver of life, says needs to be our number one priority. And it's recorded in Matthew chapter 23, verse 37. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind and with all your strength. This is the first and greatest commandment. This is the first priority, Jesus would say. This is what you need to make first in your life. This needs to be your premier priority. Jesus and his good news is first. And when you put him first, everything else will fall into place. Jesus and his good news is worth all of you and all you have, so all whom you love can find life in Jesus. So is a sport worth your kids' faith? Is a career worth your family's faith? Is a temporary pleasure worth the faith of the next generation? Is there something that you need to forsake for the sake of the gospel? What do you need to forsake for the sake of the gospel? Do you need to forsake weekend activity to make regularly gathering with a local church a priority? Do you need to forsake climbing as high as you can in your career for the sake of your family growing in their faith by knowing Jesus? What do you need to forsake for the sake of the gospel? Do you need to forsake one of the many extracurricular activities your teenager is in for the sake of them getting with a group of Jesus-centered teenagers to find their identity in Jesus and grow to reach their God-given potential? Do you need to forsake pursuing a lifestyle so you can invest in the kingdom of God for the sake of the gospel? Do you need to forsake some things for the sake of serving the local church? What do you need to forsake for the sake of the gospel? So others can grow in the gospel and knowing the gospel and seeing it change their lives. What do you need to forsake for the sake of the gospel? What's the faith of a lost generation worth? Well, I hope we can answer that question like Paul and say, it's worth everything. We will be a by all possible means church who comes alongside others so they can find life in Jesus and his gospel. A by all possible means church. This is why we're going to come alongside your family to help you know the gospel and learn how to teach it to your kids. By all possible means, we want you and your family to experience life in Jesus and his gospel. By all possible means, we want to help married couples respond to each other the way Jesus has shown his love to them. By all possible means, we want to help kids know that God loves them. We want also, by all possible means, for teenagers to know their identity in Jesus and reach their God-given potential. By all possible means, we want to equip you to live out on this mission in your neighborhoods so that by all possible means, your neighbors can find life in Jesus and his good news. By all possible means, we want to plant churches and equip leaders to serve in the local church so that through the local church, by all possible means, we can reach new people for Jesus. By all possible means. By all possible means, we want to be a church that is loving Jesus because he first loved us. By all possible means, we will keep becoming like Jesus because the Holy Spirit is at work within us. And by all possible means, we will be sharing Jesus for the sake of the gospel. Why? Because it's that good.
The passion of our Savior, the mercy of our God, the cross that leaves no questions of the measure of his love. Our chains are gone, our debt is paid, the cross has overthrown the grave. For Jesus' blood that sets us free means death to death and life for me. The innocent judged guilty, the Lamb who was slain, I'm forgiven. I give my whole life to honor this love. By the Lamb who was slain, I'm forgiven. The sinner's Savior, crown him forever. For the Lamb who was slain, he is risen. Our chains are gone, our debt is paid. The cross has overthrown the grave. For Jesus' blood that sets us free means death to death and life for me. Our chains are gone, our debt is paid. The cross has overthrown the grave. For Jesus' blood that sets us free means death to death and life for me. Means death to death and life for me.
Westside, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your weekend. Before you sign off, turn this off or click the close button or go back to your Facebook feed. I want to remind you to join us next Sunday on site or online for the start of our series. It's that good. Also, if you are new with us and you are ready to make this church your church, I invite you to sign up for Find Your Place. You can go to westside.leavenworth.com/FYP to sign up for Find Your Place. Here's Joe with a little information about Find Your Place.
If you are new with us, or if you are wondering how you can make this church your church, then Find Your Place is for you. Find Your Place is a 75-minute conversation where you will discover the best environments for you and your family to grow in your faith. You will learn about the ways our church family can come alongside you to help you grow in your relationship with Jesus. You can sign up for the next Find Your Place on the Westside Leavenworth app or on our website at westsideleavenworth.com/FYP.
2021 is going to be an exciting year. In February, we will be joining 300 churches in Kansas City and hundreds of other churches worldwide in a series called One. I want to invite you to host a watch group so others can join you in your home and watch the Gospel of Mark. We are praying that we see 3,000 people come to know Jesus in Kansas City, and you can play a big role in that. To sign up to host a watch group, visit westsideleavenworth.com/1KC. That's not the number 1, but 1 spelled out, ONEKC. Here's a video that promotes 1KC. We're so excited for what God has in store for you and for Westside in the year to come. Here's some discussion questions. Find someone to talk to, find a group that you're with, or ask these discussion questions throughout the week with the people that you are talking to. Let this discussion be enriching and help you move into that next step with your relationship with Jesus. We love you, Westside. We will see you again next week.